Hi everyone, it's Thursday again and welcome to another episode of the Dig Deep, the Mining Podcast. And today's guest is Ross Beaty, who most of you probably know, but those who don't know Ross, Ross is a mining entrepreneur and businessman who has dedicated his life to mining over the period of 45 years. He's founded and successfully developed many companies in his career, including Equinox Gold and Pan American Silver Corp. With gold reaching all-time highs and silver undervalued as we speak, there's no better time to chat to someone of Ross's calibre around what he perceives is happening in the industry and what the future holds for mining in the precious metal space. So I want to hand over to Ross and like to welcome you to the podcast. How you doing, Ross?
Pretty good. Thanks, Rob. Fine.
Really appreciate your time, taking the time to come onto the podcast. So how we start this, how we normally start is I just want to, if you can give the audience a brief overview of your career. So way back from when you graduated to sort of present day, and just a snapshot of your career, maybe tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how you've developed to where you are today, and maybe tell the audience a few things that people may not know about you.
All in 1 minute, right?
As long as you want.
Oh, well, I mean, I could go on for more than 1 minute. I mean, I'll try to be brief.
Yeah.
To
tell the truth, the audience do actually like this part of the segment of this podcast, because you may not necessarily, you may not necessarily always speak about what you've done previously, obviously over your 45 years. So, take as long as you like.
Sounds good. Well, I mean, it's fairly open history because I've been running public companies now since 1985. So, my life is fairly public, and lots of people have interviewed me and asked me about, my childhood and everything else. So it's kind of all there online if people have an interest in it. I mean, just to make it more or less summary, I was brought up in Vancouver, born and brought up in Vancouver, third generation actually. So long roots here. And, normal middle-class family, but I was always keen on the outdoors. I always liked hiking and getting outside and traveling a lot. And so that just informed really everything that I've really been and done in most of my life. I wanted a job that would take me outside. And so I became a geologist. And when I studied geology, I just loved it. I loved everything about it, how the earth works and how mineral deposits form, how earthquakes happen, and it just was something I had a natural connection with. So I finished geology at UBC, University of British Columbia, went to the Royal School of Mines in London for a master's, came back, and I wasn't really ready to stop learning. I had an insatiable lust for knowledge, and I went into law school and studied law for a hobby. And I articled and was qualified as a lawyer, but I actually loathed it. So right. I never became a lawyer. I never intended to. I was always a very good and a very happy geologist. And, I took a couple of years traveling around the world with a backpack. I spent a year in South America and Southern Africa, another year after I left London to travel through Asia, just with a set of clothes and a small backpack, and just about all over North Africa, the Middle East, right the way through Asia by land. And then hopped, Burma, Thailand, Taiwan, Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan, to get back home. But it was a very interesting year. And then I went into law school, finished law school. And by the end of the 70s, I was ready to go to work. And so I had realized I'd worked all the way through the 70s in the mining industry as a mineral exploration geologist or an assistant, right from 1970 to 1980. And I realized that I wasn't really fit to be an employee. I was too opinionated and self-centered, I guess, and really I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I started while I was finishing law school. I incorporated a little company called Beaty Geological, and I set out to be a contract geologist. I spent a while in BC, then I went down to New Zealand, spent nearly 2 years in New Zealand, came back to Vancouver, really got going with my own contract geology business, built it up fairly well. We had 33 geologists by the middle of the 80s, working all over the world, actually, in West Africa, in Portugal, in all over Canada, the United States. So it was a busy little company, and I would generate projects and flog them to companies that needed exploration programs and properties. And then I realized that, when you run a contract company, you make a pretty good living, as a sort of a bread and butter business. But I decided to take advantage of the very easy rules then prevailing on the Vancouver Stock Exchange to list a company and take my first company public, called Equinox Resources, in 1985. And that was my entry into the world of public companies. And I quickly realized, having invested, having really, we raised the grand total of $145,000 in our IPO. And I was belly aching at the ridiculous fees of $15,000 we had to pay to the lawyers and the accountants to get us public, and then another $15,000. Can you believe it?
Right,
nearly a 10% net commission to the underwriters, and I was just outraged at that. And so we netted about $115,000 out of the $145,000 raised. I bought a drill, I hired a driller, and I went to West Africa, to Liberia, where we drilled the first diamond drill program in the history of Liberia. Found a great gold deposit, promptly turned into a revolution. I literally fled with a couple. The guys kind of came with me, although our driller stayed there, and he ended up having all kinds of chaos and mayhem. We forfeited the drill and all of our equipment and fled. So great discovery in a very tough country. So that was that. But I'd financed that project in London, and so I kept going back and forth through London. So I met a lot of my original capital partners in London, and a lot of them back these dreams I had. I did have one skill that I learned I had. I could sell stock. I could tell stories, I could excite people, and I had kind of just enough geology credentials to convince them that I was going to find these huge mines and make them all rich. And of course, when you're young, you can do that, and that's kind of the skill of a promoter. So I was able to build my own business then, and even though we had failure in Liberia, we bought a little gold mine in Nevada. That was a good place to be. Then we discovered a gold mine in Nevada, and that was really my first big win. It took about 8 years for that discovery to really move through the different, we optioned the property, we staked it, optioned it to Freeport, they drilled it and dropped it. And then we optioned to LAC Minerals, who drilled 100 feet deeper than Freeport had drilled. And bingo, found a fabulous high-grade gold deposit called Rosebud. And then, discovered after a few more years of drilling that it wasn't quite big enough for LAC. And I just got lucky. Luck is the one thing that's informed my whole career. I just got lucky because they made the decision to divest their 51% stake. Right at the time, it was kind of a weak market, and there wasn't that much appetite for this sort of mid-size, high-grade gold deposit like we had. So I was able to buy back their 51% to go to 100%, and I raised the money to do that by selling a royalty to Franco-Nevada. So it was a really good time. We bought the other 51% for, I think it was $3 million. And in the meantime, we had built a zinc mine and shut it down, rebuilt it, shut it down again as the zinc price went up and down. We had another gold mine in California that was a small mine. So, I was just doing deal after deal, and it was just, it was just a crazy period. But fortunately, that little bit of timing was good. And by 1993, I was approached by Hecla to see if they could buy the company, or the deposit actually. And I said, well, you can't buy the deposit, but you can buy the whole company. So I sold Equinox in early 1994 to Hecla. And I was real happy to wash my hands of all the problems we had in the company and all the assets that we didn't want, or, that were dogs. And the stock's last day of trading was an all-time high. So it was, every single shareholder could have made money in the company. And it was really nice to exit that business really at a high point and make my first fortune. The company was sold for $107 million, which in those days was a lot of dough. And I owned about 10% of it at the time. So, I'd taken all my earnings and all my salary and revenue from the company and plowed it into buying more stock. And it was a winning formula. So that was my first big win. And, literally the next day after we sold it, I started Pan American Silver and another junior. And it just, to kind of make a long story short, there's been 15 companies till now. I'm on my last company, and I've named it the same name as the first company, Equinox. Instead of Equinox Resources then, it's Equinox Gold today. But this will be, I think, my last public company in a long stream of quite successful companies, some producing companies like Pan American and Equinox, and some were just pure exploration companies. There's a whole string. Then we had 6 in the copper business. I've had 4 or 5 in the gold business, where you just acquire or discover something and work it up, do all the usual work you need to do to prove value, and then flog it to some company wanting to build a big mine. And so I've done that many, many times in my career, mostly as a developer, but also as a significant investor. And so, taking it to the present time, it's been a great journey, full of fun. But I'm pretty much at the end of the game now, and I can just say it's been a hell of a run, and full of a lot of luck, and working with wonderful people who've I couldn't do any of this myself. I've worked with a lot of great teams, still do. Pan American Silver's got I think just a world-class management team. Equinox Gold, same thing. Along the way, just as a little detour, in 2008, having just sold 5 copper companies in the previous 4 or 5 years, for huge gains, I wanted to do something else. I'm a hardcore environmentalist. I really love nature, and I want to protect it and look after it as much as possible. People might say it's incompatible with being a miner, and they're just idiots. They're just naive, I think. I almost said idiots, but a lot of them are idiots who say that. They just have no idea what they're talking about. In any case, I wanted to use my skill as an entrepreneur and a resource. I understand the resource business pretty well, to build a clean energy company. So I started in 2008 to focus on geothermal power, thinking that it was really a world solution to our electricity problem and our CO2 problem. Quickly realized it was a very tough game. It suffers from the twin problems of being high risk and low return. Exactly the opposite to what you want. So I abandoned that quite quickly, and went into wind and hydro and solar power, and actually built a pretty big company, which 10 years later, in a couple of years ago, in 2000 and late 2017, or actually early 2018, I sold to a large similar company in Montreal, merged the 2 companies together. It was about a $1.1 billion deal. And now I'm still on the board of that company. I'm the largest retail investor in the company by far. And I'm very proud of what that company is doing. It's still staying in the clean energy business. It's a big company now. We produce almost 4,000 megawatts of clean energy. So that was a different game. Some aspects were similar to mining, some aspects were very different, but I'm very happy about being in that game, trying to do a little thing that we can all do our own little bit, right, to try to get us off this addiction to fossil fuels, and that was what I did, and I'm still involved in that, and so that's basically the story.
Yeah,
that was more than a minute, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that's fine. You mentioned the word lucky a few times. Do you think you were lucky, or do you think that because of your passion for mining, you were probably out doing, like you said, doing a lot of deals, but you were in the right place at the right time? You were probably working many hours a day, 7 days a week. You were out there doing stuff all the time, making connections, traveling the world. Because you were in that position and doing all those things, do you think that was because that brought you that luck, because you were so active and doing a lot of things? Or was it a case of, yeah, I might have been lucky on a few things?
No, I think it's the old story. The harder you work, the luckier you get. You can't just win a lottery unless you buy a lot of tickets.
Yeah.
So there's no question I had lots of exposure to luck, but there's also no question I really did get lucky. I mean, that first big score in my first company, Equinox Resources, finding that gold deposit. Sure, we had drilled probably 100 gold deposits, 100 deposits across Canada and all over the U.S. and Africa, as I said, and finally, bingo, we hit that one big strike. But then we got lucky in many ways. We got lucky and having this big company not quite find enough for them, and eventually I was able to buy it. I got lucky to be able to finance the purchase without diluting the company too much. So it's you get lucky, and then you kind of exploit your luck, and you so that takes skill, I guess. But I know a lot of great geologists, every bit as good as me, better in many respects, who spent their whole careers and haven't found a single deposit. And then I know other ones who are good geologists who find deposits and then give them away through lousy deals. Or they dilute their company out of existence and there's just nothing there for shareholders, so they can't do it again. But having made that one score, and all of my investors were really happy, they backed my next company, Pan American Silver, right out of the gate. So Pan American had this premium, crazy high premium to anything it was really intrinsically worth, which allowed me to finance and then, build a company in a rather tough market. I mean, Pan American started in 1994, and it was the old, the great knowledge of true ignorance. It was very easy for me to tell people silver's going to the moon. Silver's going, for all these reasons, silver's going to the moon. It's going to be, it's trading for $5 in 94. It's going to be over $10 an ounce by the end of the decade. Just, every penny you give me, we're going to buy these out of the money silver properties that are worthless today. And when it hits $10, we're going to have more money than Croesus. So, of course, the predictable happened. In 1994, it was $5 an ounce. 2000 came along, 2001. And at the end of 2001, the silver price was $4.03 an ounce. I mean, it had gone down. And every silver mining company was bleeding like crazy. By that time, we had acquired a silver mine in Peru, and we were losing $500,000 a month. We only had enough working capital for 6 months. So we were basically on our way to go bankrupt by the end of 2001. Everything I'd thought would happen with silver was wrong. And we were left literally on the edge of bankruptcy. And luckily, again, you call it, luck, but to some degree it was something we had worked hard to get. Bill Gates, of all people, had bought 13% of Pan American Silver. I trotted down to Seattle to see his fund manager. He agreed to back us. We had enough money. We raised a bit of money at the bottom to last about 12 months. And sure enough, in the next 6 months or so, by mid 2002. We started this crazy super cycle due to the Chinese, dynamic Chinese market starting to consume massive amount of commodities of all kinds. And silver went up, gold went up, copper went up, everything went up, and we've never looked back.
Yeah.
And so, getting that timing right, well, there's no skill in that. You're either in that kind of cycle or you're not. And I mean, to some degree, you can kind of predict cycles, but nobody can predict precisely when they turn, precisely how long they last. Nobody can do that. Now, if I can just continue on the luck side, or maybe on the not total luck side, I have to say in 2001, when there was all this blood on the street, every company was losing its shirt in the mining game. Every commodity was down, zinc, copper, you name it. Like almost, a lot of them were at all-time lows in real dollars, such as copper and silver, all-time lows. And I couldn't start another silver company because I had my silver company, Pan American. So I read an article by a guy named Chris Blaine who wrote about trends in metal prices and trends in discovery rates, and it was a fabulous article, and it just literally an epiphany happened. The light bulb went on, and I said, how am I going to be able to profit from this low, knowing that the cycle is going to turn? It always does. It always will. We're in a cyclical world, whether we like it or not. And so I said, okay, I'm going to see if I can go and buy all these copper deposits that are sitting around worthless because they're not economic at 70-cent copper, and put them into a kind of a company and just sit on it until copper prices go up. And eventually I bought 10 deposits all over the Americas, 10 deposits. And well, within about a year and a half, we acquired them. We were just like drunken sailors. I mean, we were just buying everything we could in 2002 and 2003. And by the end of 2003, guess what? That's when the copper price took off. So copper went from 70 cents to $1, $1.50 to $2, and it never looked back. And it's, went up to $4 a pound. Meanwhile, we changed from being buyers of copper deposits to being sellers of copper deposits. So anyway, in that cycle, it was a happy day. We invested a couple $100 million and made about $2 billion out of all the deals. And again, that was a combination of luck, but it was being prepared for that cycle to turn. I didn't know when it was going to turn, but having all those copper deposits, buying them right at the bottom as cheap as borscht, we were able to make out like bandits, and it was a really good strategy. So a bit of luck, bit of skill, whatever, and a really good team of people who helped me. I had a rock star lawyer who made the deals. I had a great geologist, a great mining engineer who worked with me, really solid team of people, and a great communicator of all the stories who was able to get investors excited, raise lots of money, and it was a wonderful run in those years. Wonderful run.
Yeah. In those early days, were you destined to become a sort of mining entrepreneur and achieve what you have done today? I mean, was it your dream or goal? I know you did mention that you probably, after a while, unemployable. You didn't didn't want to work for someone, but was it your dream and your goal to achieve what you have achieved today?
No, when you're young, Rob, you don't. I don't think anyone has any ability to predict where they're going to end up. I mean, I had no idea I would have been as successful as I've been. It's just been, quite frankly, I'm the most surprised person in the world. You just put your head down and work hard and see where you go. And that's kind of what I've done. And I made more mistakes than anyone. I mean, there were just one mistake after another, which, now I'm making new mistakes. They'll make mistakes. The difference is I guess I'm a fairly quick learner. I mean, I try not to make the same mistake again. But, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone that told me this is how you do it. I just basically went through the school of hard knocks. And like I said, I mean, the dumb things, I mean, it's like when you're young, how many dumb things do you do when you're a teenager? Yeah, you know that, don't you?
Yeah.
So, so you just kind of muddle through things. And like I said, I kind of got luckier than otherwise. I worked with some great people who helped me a lot, and timing was good in various respects. And so it was really, and plus I was raised in a family at the time. I mean, I got married in 1980, and a wonderful wife. She's a doctor. She was working, and so we started having kids. 83 we had a kid, 85 another kid, 88 twins, and 93 another kid. So I ended up having 5 kids, and I'm running around the world and promoting the stories and doing this and that and everything else you need to do to run a successful company. And at the same time trying to maintain a single family and a single wife, and it's a significant challenge. So, but anyway, I quite frankly, I look back on those years and I just don't know how it all happened. I can't imagine how. I couldn't do it today, believe me. At this age, I just couldn't do it. I mean, I would take red eyes all the time. I'd take a red eye a couple times a month, maybe even more. And I'd read the kids a story at night, jump on an 11 o'clock flight to Toronto, promote all day the next day, jump on an evening flight back here, and the kids wouldn't even know I was away, and I'd tell them a bedtime story the next day. So it's kind of hard to pull lessons out of any of that. You're just too busy running, and But there was a certain energy there and a motivation to build things, and I have in my core, I would say, a certain amount of, and most people who know me will agree, reasonable amount of selfishness and greed and all those base characters of the human condition that actually are really good for entrepreneurs. I mean, that's what defines entrepreneurs. I'm impatient, fairly focused on a vision. I mean, I really was like Pan American Silver. I had this vision to build the world's biggest and best silver mining company right from the get-go, when we had no assets, no money, no properties, no people, nothing. But that was our dream, and we did it. Well, we're the second biggest. We're not the biggest. Fresnillo is this wonderful Mexican silver miner that it's still there. But we're chasing them.
You're chasing, yeah. Was there certain aspects or areas that you had to work on sort of during your career that you found pretty challenging, and sort of how did you overcome them?
I mean, it's really hard to be general, Rob, when you say, how do you overcome challenges? Every challenge is different. I was lucky though, because I did have a stable family. I had a stable personal life. I really loved what I was doing. And when you love things, they kind of flow more easily. I had challenges all the time. I mean, I told you about a couple. I mean, another one, we spent 4 years trying to build what would become the world's 3rd largest silver mine in Russia, in eastern Russia, a beautiful deposit. And we spent 3 years developing the deal, which this is in the Wild West in Russia, when Russia was just haywire. in the mid-late 90s. And we actually financed it all. We had the mine 1/3 through construction, and we were attacked just when Putin came in December 1999. There was a gang from St. Petersburg who attacked us, and through all kinds of slimy tactics, ended up frustrating the whole project. And we couldn't beat them in. We tried to beat them in court. It was a failure, and eventually, I just threw in the towel. And they ended up buying the deposit from me, and we got our money back. But we wasted 4 years, and it was a case of high risk, high reward. A lot of people wouldn't have done that. I mean, I really begrudge it because it was 4 years wasted that I could have spent doing something else. But you know what, Rob, if I had that opportunity again today, I might actually go for it, because those sort of things are so rare. And when you have tough countries, I've worked in literally dozens of countries in my career, all over the world. And you can never be too picky about where you work, because countries change, and they sometimes change for the better, and they sometimes change for the worse. I think in the case of Russia, it has not changed. It's been bad to start, and it's still bad today. But even in that environment, there have been a couple of companies that have succeeded. Bema Gold was one, and Kinross is another. And I take my hats off to those teams for having succeeded in a very, very, very difficult environment. I quite frankly don't know how they did it. But anyway, those are, so, all the way through, there were these challenges that came along, and we just sort of fought them and resolved them one way or the other. They're not just property challenges or metal market challenges. A lot of them are people problems. You have the wrong guy working with you, it's hell. And if you have the right guy working with you, or woman, it's just, having the right people working with you to build a common vision. I can't say enough about the joy of that. The team I have right now in Pan American Silver, and the team I have in Equinox Gold, it's just solid pleasure working with them. They're nice people. You can have dinner with them. You can go on holidays with them. They're just lovely people. They're smart. You respect them. They respect you. And it's that environment that makes working in this kind of business fun.
Yeah. I'll ask you one more question about, obviously, your career. Is there anything that you would have changed or done slightly different if you look back?
There's a lot of mistakes I made, Rob, that I wouldn't make again, I think, or I would rather have not made. But in the big picture, mistakes happen, right? Everybody makes mistakes of all kinds. So I can't say, it's been a hell of a journey. I really have been I've been more successful or more positive things have happened to me than any I would ever normally have thought possible. So, I cannot complain about anything. I mean, if I had to do it again, I'd do it exactly the same. Really exactly the same. I don't begrudge anything. I've made lots of mistakes I wouldn't do, but at the same time, everybody makes mistakes. So it's an inevitable part of life.
Yeah, certainly. What advice would you give any up and coming mining professional that wants to sort of take that route as a mining entrepreneur? Any advice?
Well, I'm asked this a lot, and I mean, not just by peers, but also by a lot of kids of friends of mine who want to figure out what they want to do. And I always say, look at yourself in the mirror, determine what you're good at and what you like doing. Because if you put a square peg in a round hole, it's not going to work. And if you're basically not a risk taker, you'll never be an entrepreneur. You just won't. You've got to be able to take risk, and then you've got to just accept the risk and move on. And you have to have this sort of drive and motivation to build things and do things yourself and not lean on others. I guess that's probably the number one thing. And so the reality is there's really very few people who are good entrepreneurs. And that's a good thing, because if there were more, the world would spin out of control. It just wouldn't function. I really do think, though, if you're going to build something requiring, like in a public company, requiring sales skills, you have to have sales skills, you have to have that passion, the ability to communicate a story well. And not everybody has that. At the same time, a good employee is worth his weight in gold, or her weight in gold. So there's a lot of room for people to be working as part of a team led by, say, some sort of crazed, entrepreneur like myself. And so just because you may not be the lead in that game, you are still going to be a super important part of a senior team. And that's pretty fulfilling for a lot of people. So if you feel, you're say a good engineer or a good geologist or a good accountant or lawyer, be a good accountant, be part of a team, join a young team. You're going to have a lot of fun if it's successful. It's not going to be a lot of fun if it's not successful. That's risk, that's life. If you don't want to take that risk, join a big company, get that long-term, career world and have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose, like you said, it's about building a team and using your strengths. So if you're a good engineer, stick to engineering and let the other guys of your senior management team do what they specialize in. And I suppose you need to trust them as well in their obviously separate disciplines and bring that all together, which I imagine that's what you've been doing. What does it take to become a mining entrepreneur from your perspective?
I think I've already mentioned that,
Yeah.
Rob. I think you have to have a fair bit of drive and and passion and greedy, selfish, all that stuff.
Yeah. So I want to talk about obviously your current companies now. So obviously want to talk a bit about Equinox Gold and Pan American Silver that you own. Can you give us just a brief overview of both those companies?
Oh, well, Pan American's big, large cap, second biggest primary silver mining company in the world. It's got 11 mines in 6 countries and it's a big operation, 12,000 employees, $10.5 billion market cap, beautifully run, solid, fabulous balance sheet, great production, great growth. It's also a big gold producer. What more can I say? It's a fantastic company. 26 years old now and quite mature. I'm the non-executive chair of Pan American and founder. Equinox Gold, we started at the beginning of 2018. I tried, my goal there is, as I said, it's my last company, and I had just sold my renewable energy company, so I was sort of ready for my last hurrah, and I wanted it to be a gold company because I love gold, and I just think that the timing is good for at least then it was really good, and it's still to some degree good, but the big run's behind us. I was very, very optimistic about the gold price in 2017. So we put 3 companies together, went public at the start of 2018. And the vision is to build a big gold mining company. So we had no mine in production when we started. We had one development project in Brazil. So we financed that in 2018 and began to construct it. We then bought a mine at the end of 2018 in California called Mesquite. We then completed construction and started operating the Brazil mine in 2019, started construction on another mine in California in late 2019, and then bought a company called Leagold at the end of 2019. That deal closed in March this year. So our production was 25,000 ounces in 2018, 200,000 ounces in 2019, and we're on track for about 500,000 ounces this year, about 700 next year, and about 1 million ounces a year thereafter. So it's a fabulous growth trend. There isn't another company, I think, in the gold mining business with this kind of growth. And it's grown quickly because I've wanted to take it. I really wanted to build a company with Equinox that takes advantage of today's market as opposed to 10 years ago's market. Today's market favors scale. So if you're going to build something that's an operating business, you want to go big. When you go big, you have big leverage to the price. So assuming the gold price goes up, you just have more and more value that comes to you from being a large producer with large reserves. You have income leverage on the production side. The more production, the better. You have balance sheet leverage or capital leverage on the reserves and resources side. The higher the gold price, the more valuable, intrinsically valuable your company is because of all of your gold in the ground that you'll mine in the future. So Equinox today has 6 operating mines. It's very, very well run, extremely good balance sheet now, making lots of money, and it's a great company. The target there is to become a senior gold producer, not a mid cap, and we're well on the road to being that in a couple of years. So that's the plan there. And then there's a couple of junior gold companies that I'm quite involved with in Ecuador. One is called Lumina Gold, which is has a big gold deposit, 17 million ounce gold deposit, which the company is now trying to divest through to a process to find a major company that'll take that on and build a mine from it. And another junior called Luminex Resources in Ecuador, again an earlier stage company but full of opportunities. So that's my world right now. I've got a whole pile of investments in different companies, but in terms of really working on things, those are the big four that occupy my time. But I have to say, it may sound like I'm busy. I'm not that busy these days. I'm not really running anything. All those companies are very well managed.
Yeah.
A lot of my time right now is actually on philanthropy. I'm trying to give away a lot of my wealth, and it's a lot of fun. It's just as much fun as making it, quite frankly.
Yeah. And what are you doing then? Is there anything you're focusing on?
Yeah, there is a focus, 100% focus. I have a family foundation called Sitka, Sitka. Sitka. It's a big tree here on the West Coast. Sitka Foundation, and it's 100% dedicated to protection of the environment and protection of biodiversity, 100%. So that's our focus. I've always loved nature. I've wanted to protect it as much as possible, try to reverse some of the damage humans are doing. You know, the millions of species that have no voices, and mine is a little voice for them. While 98% of giving, I don't know if you know this, 98% of giving, actually it's 99%, 1% goes to animal welfare. 99% of giving then goes to people or things that are nice to people, like little pets. Only 1% of all giving goes to the nature, and yet okay. Humans have to have healthy nature or we can't exist. And right now our nature is under assault. So, you know, that's what I'm protecting, and you know, anybody can Google the Sitka Foundation to find out what we support. We support dozens. I think we're doing we fund 74 or 75 different groups across Canada and also in the world. And I'm on the board of several environmental nonprofits, the Pacific Salmon Foundation, Nature Trust, BC Parks Foundation, a group in New York called Panthera that looks after wild cats of the world and protects them as best they can and the habitat that the cats need. So anyway, I'm doing a lot of that, and that's actually just as occupying of my time as anything in the mineral space is today.
Yeah. How do you see the precious metals market over the next 5 to 10 years?
The which market?
The precious metals market.
Oh, the precious metal market.
Gold and silver.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're in a bull market, and you know, everybody knows that. It's the fourth year of a bull market. It began in 2016 when we broke out of a trend. The metal price broke out beginning of 2016 from a base of, you know, like gold price of 1050 an ounce, and now it's 2000. So obviously it's a very powerful bull market. It was a bull market anyway before COVID. So COVID just added fuel to the fire. But you know, it's going to go for a long time. I don't think it's over now. There's no reason that any fundamental reason for gold having been strong in the last 4 years is over now. Quite the contrary. The amount of liquidity that central banks are pumping into the economy and the debasement of currencies globally, zero interest, negative interest bonds. I mean, I could just go on and on. Supply issues, you know, it's just the perfect storm for gold prices and silver prices by the same token. So I don't see this ending anytime soon, and it's a great time to be in the gold and silver business.
Yeah. A lot of our listeners are, majority of them are from the mining industry, and I'm sure a lot of them do invest in shares and in companies. Why should our listeners invest in either Equinox or Pan American Silver?
There's a lot of opportunities to invest in a lot of different companies. I mean, I don't think anybody should invest in one company or two companies in this space. It's too risky. This is a very risky business we're in. I mean, things can blow up at any time. And of course, you know, the other thing is you know what returns do you expect? If you want to get 15%, buy the big companies. If you want to get 150%, buy the little companies. They have way better leverage, but they also can lose you every penny you invest. So it's all what investors want to buy. I have a broad spectrum of investments myself and companies that I'm working on, everything from a large cap like Pan American to a mid cap like Equinox to the juniors like Lumina Gold and Luminex and a whole host of others I'm a significant investor in. So that's, you know, a diversified portfolio is always the right solution, and and there's lots of opportunities from Barrick all the way down to the micro caps. But it's, you know, it's the old story. In a rising tide, all ships are floated. So if gold prices continue to go up, every gold investment is going to do well, some better than others. And that's where, you know, you've got to look at the management teams and the finances they've got and their propensity to blow money and so on.
Yeah. Got a couple more questions before I wrap this up. Is there anyone sort of past or present that you owe so much gratitude to that's helped you become where you are today? And how did they help you?
Yeah. A lot of people, you know, a lot of people. I started with my father. My father was he was an entrepreneur himself in the lumber business, and I just looked up to him. He showed to me that you can do these things by hard work. You don't have to lie or cheat or steal or you know, try to cut corners. And unfortunately, he died when I was 20 or 21, so I lost that opportunity to kind of follow that through his later life. But I certainly inherited his entrepreneur gene. My two brothers did not, but I did, and that's the way things work. You know, the guys that I worked with, the teams that I worked with, really in the early company Equinox Gold, I worked with an engineer named John Wright, who was the guy walked on water as far as I'm concerned. He helped me so much. The team I had in Lumina Copper, I should say, all my Lumina team, just wonderful, wonderful people and tremendously helpful. Pan American, you know, again, solid core, solid team, really lovely people and great amount of fun. Renewable energy, like I could just go on. There's lots of good people, but there was nobody who was a kind of a real mentor to me. Yeah. I didn't have that, and yeah, I don't know if obviously I don't think I really needed it, but you know, you make your own mistakes, and like I said, you get hit, you get knocked down, you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and carry on. That's the only thing I can say has certainly worked for me.
Yeah. If there was someone that you would want on this podcast that you would want to listen to, who could you suggest that I get in contact and interview?
Well, the guys, some people are just amazing at what they've accomplished. I've been in that category myself. It amazes me what success I've had and what wealth we've created. I never expected any of this. It just happened. But you know, the leaders in this business who make people inordinate amount of money again and again and again. There's a handful. You know, Friedland is in that category. He's the genius. The guy's brilliant. He is not unflawed. Nobody is. But the guy's just unbelievable. Lucas Lundin. Lucas has just, not only has he created immense wealth and made, you know, billions for communities and people all over the world with his entrepreneurship and his company building, but he's also an absolutely spectacularly nice guy and a tremendous amount of fun to be with. So he's a dear friend, and I just, you know, Lucas is one of these sort of icons that I worship. Rick Rule, you've had Rick on, right? Yeah, Rick is just the smartest. He just understands this business. He's been doing it all his life. He's like me. He's late on now in his career, and it's not going to go for too much longer. But the guy's just brilliant, and anybody who listens to Rick and follows his advice is gonna do well. It's a straight line. Yeah. Richard Wark. Nobody knows about Richard Wark, but the guy has just had home run after home run. He's currently got a little company called Solaris, which put out a hole earlier this week that was a, you know, fabulous hole. But Richard's just a really smart guy. He had Ventana, Augusta. He's had home run after home run, and yet he's quiet. He doesn't go into the limelight. He just likes to make people money and himself as much as anybody. So, but again, he makes himself money. Yeah. Everybody comes along in these public companies he starts.
Ross, really appreciate your time doing this podcast. I know you're a busy man. If anyone of our audience wants to reach out to you or find out more about, obviously, Equinox and Pan American, how can they go about doing that? And are you on any social media platforms?
I'm not on any social media platforms, and I don't want anybody bothering me. I have enough things that occupy my life. If they want to know about the company, of course, all the companies have investor relations teams, and everything's public. It's all online. They can go and dig it up themselves.
Yeah, no worries. Really appreciate your time,
Sounds
Ross.
lazy, doesn't it?
No, you're a busy man, and obviously that's what you've got. You've got teams to do that.
You'd be surprised where I spend my time, though. I spend half of my time in my garden, believe it or not. It's a joy to behold.
Yeah, but you said you live on the sea, so, and it's summertime, so I imagine you won't be doing too much work and spending the summer where you are at the moment. So
yeah. Well,
really,
I'm off on a 4 or 5 day kayak trip in a couple of days, and of all the things I do, those are the things I love doing the most. Lying on a beach somewhere in a tent, and it's fabulous.
Well, it seems you thoroughly deserve it anyway. So really appreciate your time, Ross. I'm sure the audience will get a lot from this and listen to obviously your journey. So I really appreciate your time. And yeah, appreciate the audience for listening. And until next time, happy mining.